The only double standards I'll tolerate are double Ds. Welcome back to Otaku Daikun. I'm Dai-chan Alter, and once again I'm here because prudes are infringing on my rights to enjoy fiction. The catalyst for today's summoning is Baldur's Gate 3, a Western RPG that came out in August. I have nothing to say about the game's quality itself, but rather some of the things you can do in the game. Let's not beat around the bush. Hell, I'll shave it clean to admit that Baldur's Gate 3 has many adult themes. Like Cyberpunk before it, the game's character creation mode allows you to customize genitalia with surprising detail. For instance, if you give your hero a trouser snake, you can pick whether it has a hood on, if you get what I'm saying. This stuff gets put to good use in various intimate scenes, the most infamous being when you romance a druid who turns into a bear. In second place, you can walk in on some ogres getting down and dirty. That's a double dose of zoophilia right there. Without question, Baldur's Gate 3 is a degenerate game. Don't get me wrong, I love Degeneracy, but I bring it up because the folks who normally condemn this stuff are suspiciously celebrating it. Instead of condemning the game for its raunchy antics, they're praising it, which is something they never do when it comes to anime games, or honestly any Japanese media in general. If you enjoy this content, be sure to like, comment, share, and smash that subscription bell as if it were your waifu. Be a generous supporter by signing up as a channel member on YouTube or joining our Subscribe Star or Patreon. All three platforms offer the same perks, such as early access and exclusive content that's too spicy for YouTube. Without further ado, let's spread this double standard wide open. So yeah, there's no shortage of headlines pointing out how relentlessly thirsty Baldur's Gate 3 is. Apparently, there are plenty of other things the game does well, but this is what most of the media has chosen to focus on. According to the Mary Sue, your ability to bang a bear is proof that your game is good. Normally, I'd agree. If a game can show off a bit of fan service before launch, I at least know the developers aren't being prudish or kowtowing to ESG. But the Mary Sue? What's up with that? Discussion on social media exploded when PC Gamer expressed its love for the game's adult content, and anime fans humbly pointed out that such words are never spoken about Japanese games, or even Asian games at large. Typically, when one of these games isn't being called sexist, objectifying, or misogynistic, it'll at least be slandered as out of date for modern sensibilities. Who can forget when Project Eve's bodacious protagonist was labeled unattractive, a design from a bygone era? That same website shoveled praise onto Forspoken, and I don't need to tell you how that worked out. This isn't the first time we've seen a strange acceptance of sexuality in a Western game. The Last of Us Part 2 featured a full-on, caught in 4K sex scene featuring strong female character Abby. I remember back when we all assumed she was a man. Sorry, Laura Bailey, but your voice is much better suited to a good game like Catherine. Come to think of it, Catherine's one of the only Japanese games I can think of where its adult themes aren't mocked. The thing about Catherine, though, is that it never actually showed people getting busy, and if it did, we know the game would have been given an adults-only rating and completely neutered on Sony consoles. That's what makes the Abby scene so insulting. Why does she get a pass when countless Japanese games get covered up for far less? There's a huge tinge of irony to this whole mess when you consider that the Abby scene was actually censored from the Japanese version of Last of Us. You see, Japan, despite being a haven of degenerate fiction, isn't actually allowed to show full frontal nudity in any of its console games. The Sero ratings board just doesn't allow for it. Their PC market is an entirely different story, but for console releases, you will never see genitalia, or so much as a woman's nipple. All these Eastern games the West complains about have never gone past a skimpy outfit like this one from Dead or Alive. This is as lewd as it gets, people. Games like Senran Kagura, which are absolutely dripping with libido, only accomplish their antics through clever, comedic censors. You would need to mod these games to see any further, and if, God forbid, you do see someone in the buff, they're shown with Barbie doll anatomy. That's right, the most indecent thing to come from a Japanese console game is undressing a toy that kids have been playing with for decades. Meanwhile, here's a scene that would only be featured in an adults-only game, being sold as a PlayStation exclusive with an M rating. Sony's censor station is notorious for demanding that Asian devs censor far tamer visuals, and here they are using an adult scene from a Western game as a special promotion. How is this not a double standard? I recall someone in the industry defending The Last of Us by saying the scene was appropriate because it wasn't meant to be attractive or titillating. It's not one of those male gaze situations. Therefore, it's a valid form of art rather than exploitive objectification. First off, I love how they admit that Abby isn't appealing. As funny as that is, I've seen this argument before with regard to censorship, and it's absolutely disgusting when you reach deep enough into what it implies. Basically, they're saying that explicit material is acceptable so long as presumed straight men don't get off to it. This logic is ironic in that it actively enables misogyny. Dictating what women can and can't reveal based on men's preferences is a critical part of patriarchy. Dudes used to demand their wives cover up to prevent other men from lusting after their property. This strategy never worked either, since people are so thirsty that they can develop a fetish for just about anything. Plus, the more you tell someone not to look at something, the more tempting it becomes to disobey. Things become sexier when you're told you can't have them. Therefore, banning or censoring certain content only drags more attention to it and further limits how people can express themselves. Imagine telling an athlete that she can't wear a sports bikini just because spectators are distracted by it. Fetishes are everywhere, and rather than trying to suppress them, you're better off addressing them when people pursue them inappropriately. This girl right here is mega hot, but it's not like I can't respect the art of rock climbing just because the people who do it present themselves like this. You can cover someone from head to ankle, and we'll still find a way to make drama about their toes. You can't judge what's appropriate or not based on how horny people get. A sex scene is a sex scene, regardless of whether it's appealing or not. Another excuse for why games like The Last of Us and Baldur's Gate get a free pass to Lewd Town is that they feature adult characters. In contrast, Japanese media is seen as problematic by these people for having adult scenes with minors. While that does happen quite often due to cultural differences, I feel this argument is in bad faith for assuming that anime characters are inherently childlike. It isn't fair to the art style at all. Plus, the argument doesn't account for the many times obvious adults are censored in Asian games. Journalists are hell-bent to condemn anime, even when it features busty, MILF-like characters, such as the sorceress in Dragon's Crown. Let's not forget that Sony had Trish's butt covered up with a lens flare for Devil May Cry 5. Surely she was an obvious adult. In recent years, Capcom's really eaten up this ESG smegma too, declaring that Japan's standards are hurtful to the West. Excuse me, but if we can have The Last of Us and South Park, trust me, we'll survive if Jill and Tifa wear actual skirts. Perhaps the worst offense of this Western double standard comes from the idea that Baldur's Gate and its Degeneracy are queer-friendly. Sir, last time I checked, the B in LGBT stood for bisexual, not bestiality. This argument reeks of the whole Bayonetta 3 debacle, where a journalist condemned Bayonetta's raunchiness the moment she took on a male lover. According to these poisoned minds, it's only okay to flaunt your sexuality when you're gay, but if you're straight, then it's just sexist and objectifying. This is the kind of logic that allows folks to wear gimp suits around children at pride parades, while my local anime convention bans side boob and under boob. I'll move on from that though, since I already covered Bayonetta thoroughly in a different video. Ultimately, anime fans are just making a simple observation. If Western devs can make degenerate games and be praised for it, why can't Japanese ones? It's not even praise we're looking for, but simply a right to exist without being berated or censored. Why is that so hard? That's what she said. One thing I don't see get brought up much regarding this double standard is the treatment of Code Vein when it first launched. This is one of those rare cases where a Japanese anime-themed console game was specifically directed to mature audiences, and yet it still got flack for daring to have boobs and skimpy outfits. I remember this article from Rock Paper Shotgun by Matt Cox, which called the game sexist for its sexy ladies, all of whom are adults, mind you. I could humor an author simply wanting the men to be skimpy too, but that's not the case here. Instead, he condemns the eye candy in general, specifically saying, "This is going to be consistently embarrassing booby, isn't it?" Bruh, stop white knighting for feminists and play another game already. They aren't going to fuck you. Seriously, where are the articles praising EO's bosom? It's not just for straight guys either. You can play as a woman and snuggle her thighs just like any guy can. Of course, we couldn't have a censorship video without an article from The Gamer, which complains about how unrealistic the breast physics are. Can someone please tell the devs that big boobs in a flimsy dress don't stay perfectly spherical? Maybe they don't, but wouldn't it be cool if they did? This is a game about post-apocalyptic vampires. Your cursed blood lets you cast magic and wield swords twice your size. Selective realism much? Let's wrap things up with some extra juicy irony. You'd think that if writers are complaining about how boobs work, they would want a realistic, believable experience, and yet the developers for Baldur's Gate are pissed that most players seem to be aiming for just that. In a post regarding bug fixes, they mentioned that despite giving players the chance to have horns, tails, and even demon eyes, the average character looks like, well, an average dude. With that being the case, it's really no surprise that the most popular romance option in this game isn't a bear or an ogre, but rather a cute elf girl. This just shows how journalists, and even Western developers, are trying to appeal to a crowd that doesn't accurately represent what their players seem to want. The narrative they're desperate to spin isn't even working for them. With that plain as day for everyone to see, all I ask for is the right to have mature, degenerate games of my own without being judged or censored for it. The concept of safe horny isn't even a real thing. What you choose to fap to doesn't make you superior to anyone else. At the end of the day, it's all just fiction, and I wish for all this weeb shaming, incel coomer language to burn in hell where it belongs. Perhaps I happen to like opie, whereas you prefer non-binary demons with a full package. We're in the same boat, so let's both enjoy ourselves, okay?
Thanks for watching!
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to Otaku Daikun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of our anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content.
You can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or our YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like exclusive vids and early access.
As always,
celebrate your fandom!
I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters. VideoGamer75, Steven Elak, Samuel Gersten, The Nonchalant Ostrich, Otaku Mom, Jens Bauman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Lord Omagoden, Free Brick, Olympian Doll, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Link Pendrago, Observer Bellis, King Kobo, James Hewitt, Uncanny EXP, Andre Foster, Jared Kraus, Yukie Eros, Sogai CH, Caitlin P, Vladimirovna, Jonathan Padua, The Taz 96, Kengo X 77, Alistair Bernadotte, and Akakaze Yume. Thank you all so much.